Just talk about messaging, particularly again, sort of around 166 pre-K expansion. Again, the committee was really thinking about, so what people are hearing in the South is consistent with what people are hearing in the North and the central part of the state. And again, that our different audiences, be they providers, school people, or parents, are hearing some consistent messaging. And you've answered some of this along the way anyway, so this is why this part is short. But we were wondering, there are 3 different questions down there around messaging, and the committee itself would love to know how it might be able to help, or if you need help around messaging. So,
yes, and basically don't go ahead of us.
So Reeva's starting.
Yes, so I want to, though, I think that it's interesting. The term messaging is an interesting term. Our job is accurate information. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to make sure, that everybody gets accurate information and the same information. Messaging to me is a little different. If you're out there at your school board meeting, or you're at your town meeting, or you're talking to your neighbors, there are messages that you want to give them about early childhood and pre-K that make them want to support this thing, and that's great. And that, because we are public servants who are bound by our legal and stewardship responsibilities, that's not so much what we do is around messaging. What we really want is to make sure that the information about the regulations and the processes and those things is clear, is consistent, and that everybody gets the same one. And so I want to focus, and maybe that's what you meant by messaging, but I just want to be careful, because there is a messaging activity that happens in advocacy that we no longer get to play with, whether we like it or not, because we have other things we have to answer to. So in terms of communication, that's why we've been working so hard to craft guidance, get everybody sign off from it, issue it, put it on the website. As Manuela said, they've got it all sort of packaged up in an easy way to get it and print it, and really look at it and read it. Don't overinterpret it. If you have a question that's not answered, don't guess, ask us. And then we will, again, it takes us a little while, because Manuela and I don't always agree, believe it or not, even though we wore the same color today. And the agencies don't always agree, and sometimes even when we do agree, the lawyers don't agree. And so there's a lot of, or the fiscal folks don't agree. And so there's a lot of vetting and talking that needs to happen in order for us to get a good answer that won't change. And so that we feel like is our responsibility, and we ask people not to get ahead of us on those things. Ask us the questions, give us a little time. We're turning stuff around as fast as we can. We have, however, we have our limitations. And so we have asked Building Bright Futures and lovely Karen to help craft some documents based on information that will be very readable, town square kind of language for audiences like families, private providers, and schools. I think AOE and schools often talk the same language, so they're really good at communicating with them, but we're still crafting. She does. And I don't very well, but crafting those I guess you would call that messages. But we've entered into a partnership about that, so that they'll draft those things. We put out the guidance so they have something to base it on. They craft some good, nice looking, plain languagey things, not as much legalese around that. Let us vet it so we make sure that it really feels like it still consistently communicates, and we'll get that stuff out. And so I think we've got a good partnership going. I know Karen and Julie and the folks at BBF have developed a communication plan. We've already been getting invites from regional councils. We love you. We'd love to come out to every regional council, and it could be that we will. But again, we don't want to get ahead of the messaging. So we come out to somebody this week, we can tell you something. We can't tell you as much as we're going to tell somebody we're going to be at a month from now when we have more messaging. So we are trying to work with the BBF statewide council and the network to set up sort of very consistent outreach to all the regions, to get the message out there, to get information out there. And then again, very much we'd love to get out and meet with people as we go. But right now we're going to be juggling both this messaging and the pre-K expansion grant stuff, because we're all the same folks, and getting out there and starting to work with the partners. So I do think, I don't know if folks from BBF can add to that, because I haven't actually seen the plan right as of this second, but it's coming. But yeah, I mean, I think that's fine.
Yeah, this is Karen, the Building Bright Futures Communications Manager.
Guru.
Actually, we're videotaping this event for people who are on the phone, and this will be on our website, buildingbrightfutures.org. We have a button right on our home page, right in the middle under the main photo, that says Pre-K for All. So we are posting everything that we are working with all the agencies directly with the guidance. We're breaking things up so that each audience can see what really applies to them. So that's actually something that we'll have up later today that's based, quoting directly from each of the guidance. Unless you guys haven't seen it yet.
We haven't seen it yet.
Okay, you haven't. Okay, it was
Maybe not today.
maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not today. But again, that's going to be up very shortly. This video will be going up again as quickly as we can get that downloaded and uploaded again. So again, it's going to go up fully, just straight up like this without a lot of editing. And then we're going to be pulling this into sections as soon as we have some time to do some editing. I'm sorry?
Said not even my comment about school boards.
You can edit that right out.
You can edit that part.
And
Yes.
And again, it's not that we don't want to come out to the, I actually have a goal this year to get out to each of the regional councils at some point in time. It's just, we kind of want to do it in a coordinated way so that we're fair to everybody and we have the most information we can when we come out to the councils and talk. And we do like to do it together when we can, because I think you just get a more, I mean, you've seen the back and forth, I forget stuff.
Yeah. So I think I'm looking at the questions, and I know the time is coming to a close. But in terms of how to disseminate appropriate information, I think that everyone here, the committee and also guests, are in a great position to say about Act 166, did you know that the pre-qualification application is up there and you really should want to go ahead and do that? Do you know that there is some guidance up there and there are even some frequently asked questions that could really help you? So I think directing them to these resources right now would be good, and you could do that today even. And then as more information is coming out by folks like Karen and others that are a lot more prettier and sexier. Messaging to me is always like you're trying to persuade people. We're just trying to tell you stuff. So we're not trying to be persuasive. But anyway, as that stuff comes out, also to just be keeping on top of it and moving forward with that. And I appreciate your support with that, because one of the things, having gone through the implementation of Act 62, which was passed in 2007 and began implementation in 2008, to this day, so that's 7 years ago, to this day, I still get questions about, so what's Act 62? So I think that it takes a while for people to actually get the information. So whatever you can do and be messengers for us about how people need to be paying attention to all these various things we've talked about and where there is information currently, and we will be adding things as we move forward.
And I think, things like, we do get questions from folks who said, I called my school board. They don't know what I'm talking about. Send them this and say, can we meet? And that starts the conversation on a really solid basis. Again, even as much as we try to just tell you stuff and be as clear as we can, you might read it and conclude different things. Ask us the questions so that we can keep providing clarification, and we'll keep doing that.
And for folks on the phone, when Reeva just referred to this, it was the guidance.
The guidance.
The implementation guidance. No, that's okay, just so that they knew what this was. I think that was really helpful. This is Cynthia again, and I think that was really helpful. And the questions really, as I interpret it from the committee, were actually the twofold. There is some messaging, and how could we help with that messaging and getting that out? And we also want to make sure that people have the accurate information. So it was a twofold, and I think you gave us some great feedback on that. Dana, thank you.
Do you have any guidance on when this message will be given to families from the schools about the enrollment? Whether we need to wait for part 2 of the guidance to come out before, let's say as a region, we could reach out to parents through the schools saying the enrollment is open and this is how you apply or enroll rather.
Well, I think it'd be important to first know which of those districts are going to be early adopters and which are not. And that list hasn't been finalized, and I don't anticipate, as I said, probably not until after town meeting and the budget is voted. Some districts have very definitively now said that they are not going to be moving forward. And so with those, probably the enrollment process will be as it always has been. And districts need to have some kind of a process for enrollment and partnership. So those things will proceed as they have in the past. But for those that are early adopters, we need to work with them so that the school districts, I mean, I haven't had a meeting like this with all of the school districts who are early adopters. I haven't had a meeting with school districts full stop, except occasionally someone will call me with a very specific question. So they are probably not as well informed about some of these things as you are. And so let's not set them up for failure or make them look bad by saying, oh, you don't have your enrollment policies yet, when they don't even know what you're talking about. So I think that some of the flyers that are going to be coming out, which are basically information about what is Act 166, I think that Karen and others are working on those, and we'll make sure that they're accurate information and those will be distributed. I think sooner rather than later, so that people are aware of that. People have, including families, have already heard about Act 166 because I get calls from families asking when can they sign up their kid. And then the enrollment process still remains in Act 166 and 62. It still remains actually at the local level.
And, one of the things we don't want to do is set parents up to have an expectation for something that's going to happen that then in March, if the school budget goes down and they have to change their plans, isn't going to happen. So we want to make sure that as we put information out, the information is accurate and up to date, and that people don't get the wrong impression, because then that hurts the ongoing relationship when we get to full implementation next year. So that's the sort of struggle a little bit. And I do think we count on trying for you guys who tend to be a little more on top of things and well informed, to help spread the most accurate messages you can and use the sort of approved messages around things like the rules and who's going forward and all of those things when you get them, and not make assumptions. And then on the other messaging side, Cynthia, again, Let's Grow Kids is done. I'll put a little plug in for them. Some really wonderful work around messaging the importance of early childhood and what's happening. And so again, the more people hear the same messages repeated and understand. I was actually shocked last spring when I said something to a report about, 80% of a kid's brain, is formed by the age. And she's like, "You're kidding." And I'm like, really? But I mean, she jumped right into that and was like, "Can we talk about that more off camera?" And I was sort of like, "Sure. Wow, I guess people really don't know this stuff." So again, they've done a great job figuring out what people don't know and what resonates. And so I would suggest getting involved with them on the messaging end and using the good work that they've done to get that out to people who aren't in this day-to-day world of little kids and families that we live in.
Great.